boys, yeah. It was perfect because he left to go back to school yesterday. He called this morning.
Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You guys good? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good? You good, Tim?
Let's go. Thank you. I do have this. Okay. Right. Look at this. Okay. Hi. I need a seat here. Yep, stay right there. Stay right there. Hi. Hello, everyone. Um, I have a few things to say before we start our. I know there's been a lot of people wondering what Danny and I are going to be doing. And a lot of you have been with us for many of the luncheons that we've had and dinners that we've had and town halls, and I know we've all seen. And I have to say, last week, and you can imagine how many people have been calling us, and I have to say, watching the debates, I thought what Governor Christie was brilliant. One of the things that he did is when he said to the cameras, turn around and it's all about you, not about us. And the last debate, when he went from the one debate to another debate, I would have been screaming. He said, just give me a place and let me speak. And he didn't do anything except that all he wanted to do was talk to the American people, which I just loved. Love what he's done in New Jersey with the veterans. That's a big issue for Danny and myself. And unfortunately, the heroin problem that we have here in our state and probably in the country, and what he has done there. And so what we want to do today is we are formally endorsing Governor Chris Christie for President of the United States in 2016. So we welcome you. And we welcome Mary Pat. And ladies and gentlemen, Governor and Mrs. Christie. So please eat and enjoy.
Excellent.
Sir, go ahead.
All right.
Am I giving this to him? Are you? No. You are.
There you go. How are you? Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. To win the Plummer primary is like it's a really good prelude to February 9th. And so, first, for Mary Pat and I, we really want to thank Renee and Danny for all of their advice and counsel over time. As you know, with Renee, all conversations are at least two-way, if not more. And she has given me great advice and counsel over the course of the last number of months that I've been coming here. I want to thank all of you for coming today. And Mary Pat and I are really excited about a lot of the different things that have occurred over the last few weeks, from the debates to some really great turnouts we've had up here in New Hampshire at town hall meetings, and great questions from folks. Obviously today with Renee and Danny, and then obviously the union leaders endorsement over the weekend. All those things I think are a testimony to how serious the times are in the country. And I want to talk a lot less about politics today than I want to talk about where we are in the country, and then take questions from all of you about whatever it is on your mind. But I'm struck to watch the president today overseas, and he said that climate change is the imperative for our nation. I have to tell you that when I think back on the Obama administration years from now, the one phrase that I think is going to stick with me the most to describe this administration, including his former Secretary of State, who now wants a promotion, is often wrong but never in doubt. I mean, that's what these guys are. Often wrong but never in doubt. Hillary Clinton said, if Mubarak and Gaddafi left Egypt and Libya, that this Middle East would be a safer, more secure place, and there'd be an Arab Spring. It looks like we're in the midst of Arab winter, not Arab Spring. She said that Assad was a reformer. They said that they drew a red line in Syria, then invited Putin in to settle the debate, and we see how that went. They said ISIS was the JV and not something to be concerned about. We have a situation around the world now where now you look at the president in the immediate aftermath of the Paris attacks, in the aftermath of all of the information that we've gotten regarding the heightened state of threat around the world. And he travels overseas to say that climate change is the American imperative for leadership. I can tell you this. Say what you want about the nearly now 250,000 Syrians that have been murdered by their own government. I can guarantee you this, they're not worried about climate change anymore, if they ever were. Fact is, the most important job of the President of the United States is to protect the safety and security of the American people. And every other job of the President of the United States comes behind that. Now, we can all order them in different things behind that, but that is the most important task. And the reason we know that is when we don't have it, nothing else matters. I remember the immediate aftermath of September 11th, and I'm urging everybody in this room and around New Hampshire to remember it too. Our country was disabled. No airlines were flying. No sporting events were happening, whether it was professional or youth. Right? The stock exchange was closed. When this country felt most under threat, we shut down. And we retreated where? To our homes, to be close to our families. It's a protective instinct. And the fact is that 14 years have passed now, so it's easy to forget. It's not that we totally forget. It's no longer at the top layer of our skin. It's now deeper inside of us, and we need our leaders to remind us of how we felt. And so for the president to be over there talking about climate change today, quite frankly, is insulting. It's insulting to the position that he holds. It's insulting even more to the responsibilities that are his for him to be talking about this stuff right now. Rather than trying to unite the world against ISIS, rather than try to find a solution in Syria, rather than worrying about how we protect the homeland in a way that's effective, he's talking about this other stuff. It doesn't make any sense to me. And you need a president who's going to focus on this, who's going to know what they're doing. Now, one of the things that I know I'll bring to the Oval Office is every morning when the CIA briefers and the FBI briefers come in to brief the president on his national security briefing, they're going to know that they're sitting with someone who not only understands what they're talking about, but knows how to utilize that information. The only person in this race who's executed applications under the Patriot Act, gone to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, and worked terrorism cases, understands the tools that law enforcement and the intelligence community needs to keep us safe. Because remember, that's the first line of defense. It's not the military. The first line of defense is intelligence and law enforcement. Those are the folks that can help prevent an attack. The military, by going on offense, can disrupt their networks and make it more difficult for them to act. But our first line of defense is intelligence and our law enforcement folks, and they need to be supported and empowered. Today, everybody, the NSA metadata program ends. Midnight today, it ended. That means we're no longer collecting that data, no longer able to utilize it in a way that helps to connect the dots, to intervene before these things happen. This is a result of the president's failure of leadership and the failure of leadership by folks like Senator Paul and Senator Cruz, who decided to take the position of the day, which was, I'm going to be more of a libertarian on this stuff. Beware of politicians who take positions when they're convenient, when they're popular at the moment. And remember that back in March and April of this year, I was talking about this issue when it wasn't popular. And the fact is that it's because it's what I know and what I believe. And I know that our country needs to have a president again who's focused on those things first and foremost. Doesn't mean you can't do other things, and you will do other things as president. But what you know, if you have the experience I have, is this is your first responsibility. Because the lives of our children, our grandchildren, our spouses, our siblings are the most important things in our lives. We're coming off Thanksgiving weekend when I'm sure many of us got an opportunity to spend time with our families in a close and intimate type of setting. It reminds us once again how important, how central those things are to our country's life and to who we are as a people. And so I've been talking about this for a long time because I know how important it is. This is not a job for on-the-job training. We've seen that over the last 7 years. We don't want somebody who needs the manual, because a lot of the stuff isn't in the manual. It's stuff you've either done or you haven't done. And I'll end with this and let you ask me questions about whatever you like. This has been an entertaining primary so far. Even to be a participant in, it's been entertaining. Has been. A lot of really good folks, a lot of colorful characters, a lot of people from different walks of American life who've decided to offer themselves up for President of the United States. That's a good thing. It's a good thing for our party. It's a good thing for our country. But it's game time now, everybody. We're, 68 days away from the New Hampshire primary. It's game time. And what the voters of the country are counting on the voters of New Hampshire to do is to do what you've always done. Be the folks who listen the hardest, ask the toughest questions, and are the most discerning. And vet this field and winnow this field for the American people in a way that's responsible. New is great. New is wonderful. New is exciting. New is shiny. New is untarnished. New is fabulous until you need experience. And then when you need experience, you go, wish this guy was a little tarnished. Wish he was a little tested. Wish he was a little tougher. Wish he had lived a little more life before we decided to hand over to him or her the most important job in the world. That's the responsibility all of you have over the next 68 days. Who are those people? Who are the ones on that stage when you look at it next 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks from tomorrow? A group of us are going to be on the stage again in Las Vegas. They're going to start like they always do. They'll have the group of us like, a bunch of circus acts, right? Standing out in front, standing next to each other, waving, All right, that's the way it'll open, all right? The TV will start. We'll all be standing out there. Then they'll have us walk behind our podiums. We're all part of the show. Well, I want you to look at those people on that stage. There'll be 8 or 9 of us probably. And I want you to ask yourself 2 questions as Republicans and as Americans. Who's the person up there who's most tested, most ready, most mature to take on the most impressive Democrat political machine in our lifetime, run by Hillary and Bill Clinton? And second, who's the most tested and ready and mature person to keep our country safe and secure and prosperous over the next 4 years? It's time to ask those questions. The other questions are fun and they're entertaining, but it's time. It's time for us to get to business, and I think you will. This is day 49 for me in New Hampshire, more than anybody else. I haven't been here because I just love the foliage, okay? Which, of course, I do. It hasn't been the only reason. The reason is because I believe the more the people of New Hampshire hear from me and get to question me, the more confident they'll become in my leadership, type of discerning voters. So we're going to see who's right, me or some of the folks in the national media who think this is a show. not a show. It's a serious business. So I'm thrilled to be back here. It's really great. When I came here the last time, I was wondering what Renee and Danny were going to do. Now I know. And I'm really happy about that, and hope to earn the support of as many of you in this room as are willing to give it, and to get your friends and your neighbors and your business colleagues to come out on February 9th to support the person you think is best ready, best prepared to win the presidency, and just as importantly, to execute on the presidency once you win. So I will stop there and take your questions on whatever you have on your mind today. And if it's the questions are really hard, I'll let Mary Pat answer them. Who's got anything? Yes, sir. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you again. One of the things, and you talked about some of the important things, but one of the things I wish you'd address, we're going to be $20 trillion in debt by the time that the inexperienced senator leaves office as president. How is the Christie administration going to solve that issue?
Well, the Christie administration is not going to solve that issue. It's going to make progress towards solving the issue, because it's taken us 230 plus years to run up 10 trillion in debt, and it's going to take us the last 8 to run up the next 10 trillion. And so any candidate who comes before you and says, don't worry about it, I'm going to take care of the national debt during my 4 or 8 years as president, is completely lying to you. Here's what we need to do. There's 3 ways to go about it. 2 big ways and then 1 specific way. The only ways to deal with debt is to spend less and get more money in. Those are the 2 ways to deal with debt. So how do we do that? First, on spending less money. I have some experience in this regard on a scale that's smaller but still rather daunting. When I became governor of New Jersey, we had an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget in a state that has a constitutional amendment requiring a balanced budget. And I want to let you know that that was after raising taxes and fees 115 times in the 8 years before I became governor. So you do that, for 8 years you figure you should be flush, right? You raise taxes and fees 115 times at the state level, but it shows what it does to the economy. It depressed the economy, it drove jobs and people out of the state, and it got worse and worse. The Democrats immediately, when I got there, I have a Democratic legislature, said, well, we need to raise taxes to balance it. I vetoed the tax increase, and I cut 800 programs in the state budget. That took a lot. I mean, that was painstaking work. It wasn't like I'm going to cut 2% or 3% or 4% across the board, because let me tell you something, that never works. Because what happens is you wind up hurting programs that you really shouldn't be hurting. It's the hard work of having to go through a budget and get rid of individual things that either are wasteful or abusive, but that's a small amount. The other ones are programs that are either outdated or duplicative that you just can't afford anymore. Every one of those programs had a constituency. Every one of them, believe me. I heard the emails and the phone calls and the protests in the State House, but I was committed to making sure we balanced the budget and we did it in a way that was honest. And we went from, when I became governor, 13% one-shot revenues, where you sell something or do something just to close the gap. We're now down to 3% in our budget of one-shot revenues. So you need to be able to cut the budget in a way that makes sense, and that's the way I would do it on the federal level. But anybody who tells you that we're going to balance the budget and deal with the debt problem that way is forgetting 2 major parts of it. The first is no one else in the race has an entitlement reform program. No one. In fact, I was reading today that someone asked Carly Fiorina about how she would deal with Social Security and Medicare, and she said she would end waste and abuse. Listen, everybody, when any politician tells you on a huge program like Social Security and Medicare, the way I'm going to fix it is to end waste and abuse, just get up and walk out, because it's total BS, all right? Total. Yeah, there's some. Of course there's some. And yeah, I want to end that. But that's about this much of the total. I've said we've got to raise the retirement age for Social Security. I've said that we've got to means test Social Security, raise the eligibility age for Medicare, and means test Medicare as well. The plan I put forward on that, Social Security, disability, and Medicaid, you can see it on my website. It's been scored by the Congressional Budget Office. It'll save over $1 trillion over the next 10 years. That's real money. Not only that it'll help to stabilize those programs, but will not have us further contributing to the $20 trillion that you're talking about. the last piece is growth, and we have to have greater economic growth. We can't have 1.5% growth, because we're not going to be able to cut ourselves out of this problem. We're not going to be able to just grow ourselves out of this problem. It's got to be a combination of both. You have to push from both ends. That's why I'm for simplifying the tax code, setting it down to just 3 rates, with the top rate being 28% and the low rate being 8%, and have there being no additional deductions or loopholes, just 2. Home mortgage interest deduction, charitable contribution deduction. The rest of them go. You do your taxes in 15 minutes. Everybody pays the same. You're making, $20 million, making $50 million. You can only deduct 2 things. No more investing in some ridiculous investment that gives you a tax write-off for all the rest. You write off for your mortgage interest, you write off for your charitable contributions. The rest of it you pay taxes on. It'll allow us to lower the rates all the way down. It'll make people's lives simpler, more money in their own pocket, and we're not running an economy to avoid taxes. Look at what's happening right now with Pfizer and Allergan. Allergan is buying Pfizer. Ridiculous. Why? Because Allergan has an Ireland address. And the people at Pfizer, and I'm telling you, I heard this from the CEO of Pfizer 2 years ago when I went to meet with him on behalf of the Republican governors. He said, this tax system in the country is crazy, and you're going to drive us out of the country. That's what we need to do on the corporate side to get growth again. Stop. The president thinks corporate inversions are a bad thing. So do I. He wants to fix it by banning corporate inversions. I want to fix it by making it no longer profitable for them to do it. And if we lowered our tax rate on the corporate level from 35 to 25, eliminated their loopholes, and allowed them to only be taxed once on the money they make, not twice, not once in another country and then back again here, these folks would not be leaving the United States. They wouldn't be being bought by Allergan to get an Ireland address. That's the way we're going to get economic growth again in the country, is to reward people who do their jobs and to reward work, and not to reward the people who are gaming the system. The reason why the American people think the tax system is rigged for the rich is because it is. They're not stupid. They know it's rigged. It's been rigged by the lobbyists and the lawyers and the special interest folks down in Washington who get paid to do it. We've got to end that. So that's the way you go about the debt issue. It's not an easy answer, but it's the right answer, and it's the only way you're going to be able to do it. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to add to this debt. They used to ask me about in New Jersey, well, how do you think you can actually reduce the budget in this state? Like, it's not possible. Well, yeah, it is. You just have to make hard decisions, and it's possible to do it at the federal level too. You got to be willing to take the heat that comes along with that, because I'm going to cut a program you're going to like. I don't know which one it is yet, but I can guarantee you, I'm going to cut a program you're going to like. And I got to be willing to come back up here to New Hampshire, and when you say to me, hey, I like that program, you cut it, I'll say, hey, you were the guy who asked me about the 20 trillion in debt, right? I'm from New Jersey. I got a good memory. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you.
In this state, we have the great honor of welcoming our troops over here at peace when they come and go to the Middle East. And even in the face of what's happening in the world, President Obama is continuing to decrease our troop strength. And as you know, many of these men and women go over repeatedly. Some have been over 10 times and more. My question to you is, once you're president, what will you do to rebuild our military and help these soldiers?
I have a very specific plan on my website. I'll go through the high points for you. Right now, our active duty soldiers in the Army are at the lowest level we've been since 1940, since before our entry into World War II. They're at about 400,000 or so troops. I would say we have to be committed to an Army that's never less than 500,000 active duty soldiers. That's not only to project strength, it's to project sanity. Because what you're talking about is absolutely right. What we've done by lowering those levels is we haven't lowered our commitments. We're just making these men and women go over multiple times. This has an enormous effect on them from a mental health perspective. And we're seeing that every day with our veterans who come home. And it's putting enormous strain on the reserves and on the National Guard, which were not intended to be doing that kind of duty on a regular basis, but now are, and we know that. That affects families at home too. So increasing our troop level in the Army to 500,000, and in the Marines, by the way, to no less than 185,000 active duty Marines, will allow us to have folks be able to have sustainable deployments, not the really backbreaking deployments, multiple deployments that they're having now. Third, the Navy is now smaller than it's been at any time since World War I. We need to get, the president's now at a 260-ship Navy. We need to get back up to a 350-ship Navy. We need to modernize the Ohio-class of submarines. We need to do that because the Chinese are challenging us in the South China Sea, building artificial islands, setting them up to become future military bases to dominate shipping in the South China Sea. That's something that's going to be bad for our allies like Korea, like Japan, and others, and it's going to be bad for the United States. So we need to get back up to a 350-ship Navy. We should have no fewer than 2,600 coded and ready aircraft in the Air Force. The president wants to reduce the Air Force's hardware by 50%. Now, if we know these numbers and they're readily available, so do the Iranians, so do the Russians, so do the Chinese, and they are challenging us around the world because they know we are spread too thin from a personnel perspective, we're spread too thin from a hardware perspective, and they know this is the time to take advantage of us. So as president, that's part of the reason why you do the entitlement reform you do and save the money you do is to take some share of that money and to be able to invest it in rebuilding the military. Because otherwise you have no way to do it. Anybody else is going to tell you they're going to rebuild the military, I just want you to ask them how. How are they going to pay for it? They're going to add to his debt? If you want to do this, you have to reconfigure the way you spend the money. But it is an imperative to rebuild the military to levels that are smart and sustainable. And right now, the president goes 0 for 2 on the smart and sustainable plan. And ours is on our website. We go through specifics, and we talk about how much it'll cost, too. Yes, sir.
I always find that Monday morning quarterbacking is always easy for politicians to do. So it's easy to say what you would have done in places like Syria. So I'm curious, where do you see that region of the world headed? What worries you? And what would you do about it?
The thing that worries me the most about that region of the world is we are now seeing what it looks like without American leadership. The Middle East is almost in a post-American world where you have the Russians in Syria, you have the Iranians exercising their influence across the region in a way that's not positive. You have dictators in certain parts of the country that no longer feel any type of allegiance towards the United States. And you have allies of ours who no longer believe that we're totally with them. So I think the first thing you need to do before you can tell where the region's going to go, you want to try to think about where do you want the region to go? And then what strategy do you employ to try to get it there? The world is too big, too complicated, and too dangerous place for America to be doing almost anything on its own anymore. We have to build and maintain alliances in these areas. And right now, if you were the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Emiratis, the Saudis, would you really want to be teaming with us? We pulled out of Iraq completely and let the place go to hell. After all the investment, whether you agree with the Iraqi initial war or you don't. We then made that investment, we pulled out of it, and the place is now gone to be controlled by ISIS and be factionalized. Then we signed a ridiculous nuclear agreement with Iran. The combination of those two things, it appearing as if we're trying to establish a Shia alliance between ourselves and the Iranians, and our unwillingness to stay the course in Iraq with just some measure of troops to allow the government there to have some sense of stability, tells these other allies, like, we can't be counted on. If those Sunni countries believe we're playing footsie with the Shias, end the ball game. And so we got to decide who our friends are. I've watched the Iranians now for 36 years screaming death to America. I'm pretty sure they're not our friends, nor do they have any interest in being our friends. Only in this president's world, a world where he sees the world as he wishes it were, not as it really is, would we be doing this kind of stuff. We should be, so what do I have to do as the next president? First thing I have to do in that region is to get with the people who have been with us and to listen to them, allow them to vent about what's gone on the last 7 or 8 years, and allow them to tell me what their vision is for what they think the region should look like. So that's the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Emiratis, and the Israelis. And we need to have those conversations. And it's going to take some time. because it's taken a long time to get the relationship to the bad place it is right now. Then we need to go to our European allies, our NATO allies, and say, all right, we're obviously all under threat here. What's your view on what you're willing to put in, what your level of commitment is, and what you think the strategy is we need to employ? America can lead by listening, too, and we should start listening. Part of the problem with this president is he doesn't listen to anybody. We need to listen to Cameron. We need to listen to Hollande. We need to listen to Merkel. We need to listen to Trudeau in Canada. We need to listen to Peña Nieto in Mexico. If we really want to lead the world, we got to listen too. So it's going to be a longer process. And then we come up with a strategic way to approach trying to bring some sense of stability to that region. I'm not one of these guys who thinks that democracy is going to be bursting out all over the Middle East. I think that's turned out in both administrations to be more wishful thinking than it was hard-headed reasoning. But we do need to have some stability. And right now, Egypt's under martial law, Libya's on fire, Syria's on fire, Iraq's on fire. Turkey's taking shots at Russian airplanes along their border. Everybody, the Yemenis are under siege from the Saudis and others because they see them as a threat. The region's in really it's just in an unstable place. And so we need to bring stability back. That should be the first goal. And not to have bigger goals than that. But to do that, you're going to have to get the allies on both the Sunni side and the European side on board. And the way to do that, they want us to lead. They know we're the indispensable nation. But we can't be shooting from the hip and doing it on our own. We got to listen. And we got to make them have skin in the game. Because the American people deserve to have others have skin in the game and not only have our skin in the game. That's not the right way to go. It's proven to be unsuccessful. So we can all Monday morning quarterback. And your question is really good. But believe me, the president doesn't Monday morning quarterback. He's like, I think it's all working out well. How about, the day before the ISIS attacks, he said we have ISIS contained. Sometimes Monday morning quarterbacking needs to be done when the guy who's actually under the center refuses to see that he's been intercepted how many times, he's still throwing the same pass. We need to do something a little bit different. And that's the way I would go about it. Yes?
Thank you, Governor. Last month I attended 3 wakes, a 21-year-old, a 22-year-old, and a 27-year-old. Heroin overdoses. When you become president, what will you do with this epidemic?
Well, we need to change our entire approach to it because it's been a proven failure. And this is not to impugn the character or the intentions or motives of people 30, 35 years ago who started the war on drugs and who have sustained it over that period of time. There's a lot of good things that have happened. And for folks who engage in violent conduct and who are dealers, there's always got to be a jail cell available for those people because they're sociopaths and they spread poison in our neighborhoods and they need to go away. Where we've missed the mark is that we believe that everyone who's involved with drugs is created equally and that somehow the petty, non-violent, non-dealing person deserves to go to jail too, and that's what's best to turn their lives around. And what we know is it's just not true. 50% of our jail population federally, 50% of our jail population federally is in there on petty drug charges. It's not working. You know what happens, whether it's a state prison or a federal prison, they go into jail drug addicted, drugs get smuggled into jail, they stay addicted, or they don't get any treatment, and they come back out, and we wonder why recidivism nationally among these drug offenders is 60 to 65%. Well, we don't give them the tools to reclaim their lives. And we think that, we punish them and show them the error of their ways. That misunderstands what you know and understand, which is this is a disease. It's not a choice. The only time it's a choice is the first time. And after the first time, it can become a disease, depending on your genetic makeup, your background, your mental health situation, becomes a disease. And then folks, many of them are just lost. And they don't know how to fix themselves. Many of them don't care, but many of them do and want to desperately fix themselves. So what I would do as president is we would establish drug courts in every federal court in the country. We would encourage state courts to do the same. Increase the funding for treatment. And we would do it by taking it away from the corrections budget. $49,000 a year it costs in New Jersey to incarcerate someone. It costs $24,000 a year to give them inpatient drug treatment. So even if this isn't in your heart and it's just in your wallet, it makes sense from a wallet perspective because we're not getting anywhere. The last thing a president has to do is to talk about it. We had 8.4 million people view that video the Huffington Post put up of me talking about this in a really personal way at a town hall meeting here in New Hampshire. It was extraordinary to us. 8.4 million people watching something. And I think they watched it because they saw me talking about this in a way that was personal and that really cares about the people who are affected by this. The president needs to talk about this. The reason for that is it will lower the stigma. I talk in that video about my mom being addicted to smoking and smoking for 55 years till she was inevitably diagnosed with lung cancer. And when she was, no one ever came to me and said, don't treat her. She's getting what she deserves. She made a choice. Surgeon General told her it was bad for her. Surgeon General told her it was going to cause lung cancer. Now she's got it, so she's getting what she deserves. Don't treat her, no chemotherapy, no radiation, nothing else. Let her die. No one ever said that. Nor was I ashamed to tell anybody that my mother had lung cancer. I didn't see it as a reflection on me. I didn't see it as a moral failing on her part. But if my mother was addicted to heroin and not nicotine, I wouldn't have talked about it. I wouldn't have. Because somehow that reflects on me, reflects on our family. We make moral judgments about this. And the fact is that when people are addicted, they have a disease, just like cancer, just like diabetes, just like heart disease, where are there choices that are involved often with people getting those diseases? You bet. My mother's was smoking. Diabetes and heart disease can be your diet or smoking on the heart disease side. But we don't say don't give the bypass surgery. And we don't mumble when someone asks why dad's in the hospital. Oh, he's quadruple bypass. He's doing great. He'll be back fit as a fiddle in months. He'll be great. We got to start thinking about drugs the same way because it's killing families. It is killing families. And the last part of this is when the president talks about it, the stigma starts to go away because the president talks about it and because you can give examples of every type of family in America this touches. We have this delusion in some quarters that it's just the uneducated or just the poor or just minority groups. It's everybody. This touches every family in every way. And, that's what you got to start talking about. And that's what will change the country's attitude and move us towards a treatment model that will give people the tools to save their lives. The last piece of this is, if anybody in this room is pro-life, you've got to be for treatment. It's intellectually inconsistent not to be. Because if the life is precious for the 9 months in the womb, it's precious when it's a drug-addicted 16-year-old girl on the floor. Old lawyer who got addicted to painkillers. These lives are, and if I'm pro-life, I'm going to be pro-life for the whole life. The 9 months of the womb, the easy part. It's coming from a man, of course, who never had. That disappoint us. When they come out, it gets a lot more. And that's when, if you're pro-life, it really matters. So that's what I would do. That's the way I would talk about it. And it would be a priority of my administration because it's affecting neighborhoods in every corner of this country. And no one should have to be sitting at those wakes for 21, 22, 23-year-old people and watching those lives go away. And one last story. We after that video really went viral and started to get a lot of views, I was up in Hanover doing a town hall meeting, and I walked up to the venue where I was going to have it, and there was a couple with a dog standing outside the venue. And they said hello, and I went up and shook their hands, and the gentleman introduced himself, introduced his wife. He said, Governor, we stopped by here because we wanted to say thank you for the video that was put out and the things you had to say about addiction. It means a great deal to us. And I said, well, you're very welcome. And he said, you see, because our son died a week ago today. He was 23 years old. He died of a heroin overdose. And here's the worst part about how ashamed people get about this. He said, when we went to the hospital, they live in Rhode Island. He was here in New Hampshire, as is their younger daughter, who's a student at Dartmouth. And he said, here's the worst part. When we went to the hospital to claim his body, the emergency room doctor came to us and said, you know, I saved your son 6 times. This was the 7th time he had been to the ER, and I couldn't save him this time. And he said, do you know, Governor, we never were told, because our son was of age, of majority, so he didn't have to tell the parents. And he was so ashamed of what he was involved in that he didn't tell us either. He said, my God, if I had just known one of those 6 times, maybe there's something more I could have done. And, you know, everybody, we need to get smart about this. And those parents shouldn't be in the dark like that. Renee, you had your hand up there.
Well, I did,
Called
but
on your
I'm not
sister
going
first.
to, because what we're going to do is end this, if you don't mind.
I do, actually, but okay.
No.
You know he loves to
But,
talk.
so what we'd like to do is people want to come up. I know that people would like to speak to you personally.
Sure.
So if you don't mind, and.
Not at all.
All right, is that okay?
That's perfect.
So I want to thank you so much,
Great.
Mary Pat,
Thank you, Renee.
for
Thank you.
coming. All right, thank you. I suggest that you want to get up, get your cap.